Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk to you about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to implore you I want to encourage you I want to beg you to abandon pursuing fun with Dungeons and Dragons. Reject it. It is wrong. And I want you to embrace what, in my humble opinion, is the true purpose of Dungeons and Dragons for every dungeon master, every dungeon performer, everyone who plays a player character at a Dungeons and Dragons table. To the purpose of Dungeons and Dragons, in my humble opinion, and this is the point that I'm trying to bring you to, is to achieve. And today we're going to talk about achievement answers. Okay, achievement, open paren, answers, close paren. All right, let's get into this. So first of all, it is the greatest. What do you want to be, right? Like, do you want to spend your time watching professional football and drinking beer? Like, are you going to be a muggle, or are you a wizard, Harry? Like, so first of all, if you're a muggle and you intend to remain a muggle and that's all you want for your life, and then honestly, in my humble opinion, don't waste one more minute with Dungeons and Dragons. If your purpose is to have fun, there are, like, why on earth would you read 800 pages as the start to pursue fun? Air quotes, right? You have to read the DMG, the PHP, and the Monster Manual to even fundamentally begin to understand Dungeons and Dragons. Most dungeon masters have read 10, 20, 30,000 pages of content, have spanned no less than 5, 10, 15 different realms lore, right? And now dungeon masters are trying to understand how Dungeons and Dragons fits into the most complex, expansive multiverse that has ever been created for any IP ever. Dungeons and Dragons spans into Fortnite. Dungeons and Dragons spans into the Magic the Gathering realms. Dungeons and Dragons Dungeons and Dragons started by systematizing Lord of the Rings. It's like the intellectual property is so expansive, right? And so if you want fun, why on earth would you pursue it with Dungeons and Dragons? They're so, like, go play Candy Crush. It will waste your time. It will fill your time until you fall into the pine box. Don't waste another minute on Dungeons and Dragons. If you want fun, there are a million meaningless, useless ways to pursue it. It's basically like, it's like trying to shovel with your fingers, right? It's just Dungeons and Dragons is the most useless tool to pursue fun. But to achieve, it's massive. And it can do things that nothing else can do. So let's go into what the actual purpose, in my humble opinion, that Dungeons and Dragons is for, and that is achievement. And let's talk about what we should achieve with Dungeons and Dragons. Achievement. There are so many things that be achieved with Dungeons and Dragons. I want to talk today about answers. So, if you are a charismatic, confident, intelligent person, you are in a strange space. Okay, and the reason, and I have been here, and I think you've been here too. I recently had a problem with my phone, right? And I'm very tech savvy, right? And I was like, oh man, I have this problem with my phone. How am I going to get this fixed? Right now, I'm not an Apple owner. I don't go to an Apple bar. And I was like, I said to my wife, I'm going to go, to the shop, and I'm going to actually go down to the shop, and they ain't going to help you with that, right? Like, she's dealt with this stuff before. And I realized I have this question. I need something fixed, and there is no one I know who knows more about this, right? So the only way to get this to be done would be to, like, start a journey to find some expert. And the reality is, it's so far up the chain, it's virtually impossible to do, right? And I think many, and again, everything we're talking about, if you're at some muggle, shove off. None of this is for you, right? This is only for people who are trying to do more, be more, see more, experience more in this life, right? And so, and it's for people who are already charismatic, confident, and intelligent. And frankly, I'm talking to you because I'm you, right? Like, oh, boo-hoo, you have some problem that But so much of your life is already great. And I think many people who come to Dungeons and Dragons, they're coming to Dungeons and Dragons because, like, the people who are here, they're like, I'm going to start with 800 pages of reading. Like, there are no normal people playing and running Dungeons and Dragons. These are all the most epic, like, Beowulf people of our time, right? And they have questions that no one has the language to even discuss with them in their lives, right? Because they're not thinking, and they don't sit down for 3 hours and watch professional football on a Saturday. It's unthinkable, right? Like, they're like, oh, well, what book am I going to read? What philosophy am I going to consider? You know, what thing am I going to achieve, right? And for these people, they have questions, deep, abiding questions, right? Let's say, somebody who watches professional football, their dad dies. Oh well, I'll be sad for a day. Let's keep moving, right? And they're for charismatic, confident, intelligent people. They're like, okay, I've just had a death in my life, right? How do I deal with this, right? What does it mean to lose someone who's close, and how do I process that? Anybody else, you're done. Like, what are you going to do, right? Like, who's going to help you, right? But a dungeon master, right? Well, yeah, like, if you play Dungeons and Dragons, your sidekick might die, right? And then you're going to need to process that. And you're like, well, Scott, what's the value of processing the death of a sidekick? It's a remove. You understand that, right? And this is the issue. Sometimes the problems are so personal, we cannot process them by ourselves because it's so close to what we are and who we are and how we do things, right? But when there's a player character, there's a remove, right? When the sidekick dies, right, we can then see how the player character moves through that grief, right? What they do to process it, how they talk around the fire, right? What actions they take, right? How sadness and grief affects their performance as they must continue to adventure, right? And you're like, well, but wait, how's that gonna happen? Well, the dungeon master, and this is the part, right, where what Gary Gygax did was so phenomenally important, right? He created this dungeon master position who is not your friend, okay? They are not, and their relationship to you is removed. They have more power than you, but they also understand you, and they are obligated to you to bring a narrative to you that is clear, concise, and meaningful. This is what Gary set into place. He's like, I am setting a new relationship for humanity, right? This person is going to help you set the question in place and help you answer the question. And I just, I'm sorry, I have short videos, right? So, and that's not an accident. And I'd love to give you 8 more examples of deeply profound questions that can be answered with Dungeons and Dragons. But we're just going to stay with this one, right? And that Dungeon Master has a remove, and Dungeons and Dragons allows anything in life to be experienced with a remove. And that remove is the deepest philosophy that has ever been given to humankind. It is this free, safe, people talk about a safe space, right? And then they try to construct it and it fails utterly. Dungeons and Dragons was the first safe space. It came in 1974, and it gave a way for us to take massive risks, to ask questions that cannot be asked in real life because no real answer will be given. Because they're either incapable of it, or the answer is so terrible and so personal and so ruinous that it cannot be given to you because there's no remove. But the Dungeon Master has a remove. The Dungeons and Dragons world is at a remove, and it allows deep, abiding questions to be asked safely, right? Without responsibility for it, right? There is responsibility. That's why we use safety tools. Without the full responsibility weighing on your shoulders, right? You have a pretense that the question is for your player character, right? It is profound, and the safety is incredible, and the cost is stunning, right? $150 in books, limitless questions, a relationship that no one else has. Who has a dungeon master? Who is going to be guided for 10, 20, 30 identities and be able to ask 100 questions in their lifetime and then run through social experiments with those questions being answered? Gary gave a gift to humanity that is unparalleled. And I am begging you, do not, right? Do not find a diamond mine, dig a deep hole, and think that the valued part is the fill dirt. Fun is not the purpose of Dungeons and Dragons, in my humble opinion. Achievement is. It is deep. It is deep. We can do so much if we look Gary's legacy in the eye, if we accept his challenge and say, I will understand what this thing is. I will understand that we made the wheel and then we made Dungeons and Dragons. And when it comes to our sociality, when it comes to our culture, when it comes to our intellect, this is the new wheel. This is so profound and so huge that we must grasp it. We must grok it, and we must save it from the fools who tell you its highest purpose is a jolly little some kind of found D&D. No, that's not what it's here for. Go further. Be more. Answer the questions. Be the dungeon master. Be the dungeon performer. Get there. Save yourself from the fools who tell you Gary's greatest legacy is jolly titters. You know, I'm glad I had fun. No, that's not what Dungeons and Dragons is for, in my humble opinion. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. But the most important part is when I hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.